We talked before about Solomon and his life and reign. And in his latter years, he wrote the book of Ecclesiastes, which reflected on his life, on what he had accomplished, what he had done, what he had gained. And he really came down to his conclusion that everything was vanity except to love God and to keep his commandments. This was the sole purpose of man. When he was younger, he wrote the book of Proverbs, mainly to give instruction to his son and to his children. And this really summarized most of what he had, his wisdom, and told about persons' interpersonal relationships with each other and with God. But he also had a third book that you don't hear about very often. It's called the Song of Songs, or the Song of Solomon. Some people dispute whether he wrote it or not, or whether it even should be in the Bible, but it is. And it says the Song of Songs, which is Solomon's. So it pretty well defines it from the start. It's a love story. It is a love story with great detail and passion and intimacy between apparently Solomon and a Sulamite girl who loved each other. And it was filled with all sorts of imagery and ideology, which is different from other books in the Bible. In fact, God is not mentioned even once in the entire book. But it fills with an intimacy that is there to really illustrate what love should be like between a man and a woman. An intimate, wanting to be with each other love that doesn't die. Now perhaps this was written because at that time the main deity in Canaan and in Israel was Baal. And Baal temples were filled with young girls who were given there as prostitutes for the temple, to be used as sex slaves, because sexual immorality was part of Baal worship. And if they weren't used as sex slaves, they were used as human sacrifices to the god, as most of the pagan gods of that time required. So perhaps this was written as a means to show what true love should be between a man and a woman, each one giving to the other the depths of their emotion, their passion, and their heart. Some people also say that this is a reflection of God's love for Israel and how the relationship between Israel and God should be. And some also say it reflects the relationship between Christ and the church, because Christ is to marry the church as his bride, according to Revelation. It is supposed to be an intimate and all-encompassing and a relationship full of love, one towards each other. It's often been said that if you really love a woman, or a woman loves a man, then you want to be with each other. You want to be with them almost all the time. You want to share everything with them. You want to share your life, your ambitions, your hopes, your dreams. You want to share your life as it goes on with each other. And this is really the relationship that we are supposed to have with God. We are supposed to be there in an intimate type of relationship. God loves us that much. It would not last very long if you never had a relationship, or had a relationship but you never showed up, in which you never went to greet the woman or the male, in which you never had any kind of time with them, if you never spent any time with them, or went anywhere with them where they were. It just wouldn't last. But we also always expect relationships with God to last, even though we don't show up half the time, or try to make time to be with him. But this is really what the Song of Solomon is about. It's about relationship between people and between God and man. Now the question always arises, if God loves us this much, why does he allow things to happen like what happened in France 2 days ago? This is always the question which people bring forth. If you have a loving God which loves you that much, why do these things happen? Well, first of all, the Bible tells us very clearly that God is not really in charge of this world at this time. Satan is. Satan still runs the show. Even though he's been defeated at the cross, he's never been sentenced and had the sentence imposed. So he's still free to run and to do what he wants. The second thing is, we probably don't have that relationship and don't support that relationship that we're supposed to, and as the Song of Solomon indicates. And as a result, we don't have the influence that we probably should have with God. It says in Romans, he says, the righteous shall live by faith. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who hinder the truth in unrighteousness. Because that which is known of God is manifest in them, for God manifested it unto them. For the invisible things of him since the creation of the world are clearly seen, having been perceived through the things that are made. Because that knowing God they glorified him not as God, neither gave thanks, but became vain in their reasonings, and their senseless heart was darkened. Even as they refused to have God in their knowledge, God gave them up unto a reprobate mind to do those things which are not fitting, being filled with all unrighteousness, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, malignancy, whisperers, backbiters, hateful to God, insolent, haughty, boastful inventors of evil things, and disobedient to parents. Perhaps it's our attitudes that result in so many young people heading overseas to join ISIS. Perhaps it's because God is not listening to us the way we would like him to, because of our disobedience and our lack of love towards him. When we don't show up for things, when you come in late, leave early, when you don't show up for a study in Bibles, when you don't understand the message of God, it's very easy for God to turn his head away. And this illustrates what happens when we aren't faithful to him. It's interesting because you see the murders of innocent people, the murders and the total lack of remorse of the people who did this, and the total dedication they have to a pagan faith. There's no real difference between what's happening today and what happened back in the days of Solomon, except there's just no temple involved. We still sacrifice innocent people to a god and promote young people to be as sex slaves to the men. It's a difficult world we live in. But how can we bring people to our religion when this is the perception that they have? Because they say most people outside North America perceive Americans as Christians. But when they see American Christians with loose morality, such as premarital, extramarital sex, the gay lifestyle, the frequent divorce, they may think, why would I want to convert to a religion that has such loose standards? What is happening in the world is part of the way the world is going. And part of the way the world is going is because we have not had that life, that love of God that we should have had. And as the Song of Solomon illustrates. Just something to think about.